What is up, everybody? Welcome back to Blerd Out. We got the new One Piece chapter 1143 is out, so we're going to be talking about that, of course, but also there's some new One Piece stuff. So Anime Japan is going to be premiering, I think, tomorrow, the 22nd and 23rd. They're doing Anime Japan 2025, and One Piece is going to have a panel there. It's about 30-ish minutes. And we're expecting to get some pretty big reveals. It seems like we might get some movie news, which is really exciting. But they're also going to be talking about the Egghead arc that's coming up. Now, if you somehow have been unaware, One Piece has been on hiatus for 6 months now. Well, I guess 5 months now. It comes back in April. And so part of that stage presentation is probably going to be talking about it coming back. We're probably going to get like new visuals, we're probably going to get some premiere stuff. It's going to be cool. I'm excited to see what they plan to do for this because we've been waiting for a while. Just trying to see what they're going to change up with the anime to make it a bit more digestible. You know, we expected things like better pacing, we expected better animation, maybe a bit less like, you know, censoring or changes to the main storyline. And we've been waiting for a long time, so it's really exciting to have that notice of new content coming. So be tuned for that. If there's enough like big reveals, like if they start talking about a movie and stuff like that, and they have like cool premieres, I'll probably do a video on the main channel for that, so keep an eye out for it. As always, if you are not caught up to the latest chapters or episodes, please note there will be spoilers ahead.
Spoilers.
Okay. One Piece chapter 1143, God's Knights. Now we do not have a cover story, instead we have a color spread. And this one looks to be the Straw Hats participating in like a flying fish competition. And we've got basically Luffy versus Zoro for first place. And then everyone's kind of like falling in rear. All of the flying fish have the crew's numbers on them, as usual. Usually when they do like big group things, you'll see the number scheme where you see the order in which all the Straw Hats end up joining the crew. And you have Luffy, Zoro, Nami in front as they're the OG trio, which I always love to see. And then you kind of have like everybody tailing behind. Not everyone has their own ride. I just noticed that Jinbei is just down there in the water. Not even on a fish, he's just in the water by himself. But not everyone has a ride. Like I think Chopper, Brook, and Usopp are all hitching rides. Chopper's with Zoro, Usopp's with Frankie, Brook is with Robin. And what's crazier still is that on Robin's, I don't think anybody is steering that one. I think theirs is just flying. They're just chilling. Like Robin has a drink, Brook's just playing music. No one's steering that thing. It's just vibing. Also, I will have to note that Nami looks exceptionally well here. I do like the outfit. It almost seems like it says Chanel on her sports jacket. You can see the Nami on front, and then it says Storm on one of the other sides. And I'm trying to see some of the other ones. I think Luffy's might say Voyage. And I can't really tell what Zoro's says. As always, I love a good color spread. But we dive into the chapter, and we have Saul basically trying to figure out what's going on with all the kids. Because they're all asleep, they're all following this random line, which Saul refers to as white cloth, I think. So I think the arrows are consistently bandages, or at least the cloth that Gunko has around her body. Because Saul here specifically refers to it as cloth. Oddly enough, he doesn't really try interacting with it. I would have liked to see what happens if he grabs it. Instead, he wants to try and stop the kids. And Robin mentions that basically they were told not to try and touch the kids. They didn't say why. They were just said, hey, don't touch the kids. And Saul's like, yeah, I know, but let me just try and stop him anyway. So he goes in to do it, and he hurts himself. That's what you get for not listening. But, he had tried something, I guess. And basically, these vines with thorns on them pierce his hand. Pierce his hands, actually, because he went with both hands. And he ends up hurting himself. And he recoils back pretty hard from, like, the vines. So the thorns must not only be sharp, but they must be, like... I would imagine they do more than just stab you. Because he reeled back really hard. In the library, we have Anj reporting to the giants in the tavern that all the students are sleeping, they're walking away. Basically, they're giving them an update on everything that's happening at the school, at the library, all that stuff. Because all the giants in the tavern, they've been drinking, they haven't been paying attention to anything. So you can update on the kids, update on a fire, they have an update on like the beasts that showed up. Basically, everything's going crazy. And the kids are apparently heading towards the 8th branch. So I think the way Elbaf is structured, they kind of have, I would almost say like groves, kind of like Sabodi has, where it's like Grove 1, Grove 29, things like that. They have branches, like 8th branch, 7th branch, probably leads to different areas in Elbaf. And 8th branch is also the area where it looks like the fire is spreading. I would imagine the 8th branch is somewhere above Loki, or at least in the general area of where like Loki was chained up, because the lightning came, and when it hit the branches as it came down to where Loki was, it started to fire. So they should be generally in the same area. Jarl ends up mentioning that his great-great-granddaughter, Ylva, is a part of that group of kids that are probably being walked away. But they're all drunk. They're all lit out of their minds. They're all still having a good time. Like they're not processing what's happening for real. You can even see some of them are like smiling and still enjoying themselves. The only person that's really like sane here right now is Nami, which is pretty common. Even Brooke's still lit. And then out of nowhere, we have what it looks to be like a giant firefighter group. They're the fire brigade, and they're heading out to put out the fire. They immediately get swatted out of the sky. Like, they had probably 2 panels worth of screen time before one of the art demons crawls out. It's the giant skeleton one. Crawls out of the forest, smacks them out of the sky. And we literally never hear from them again. That was it. Wraps. And all the giants are shocked by that. I don't think they've seen the giant beasts quite yet, so this is probably their first time seeing it, which would explain the immense shock, and also just how big that giant skeleton actually is. And then we pan over to the Gods Knights. So they're basically just vibing, eating food while all this chaos is going down. And we get a bit more like character traits from especially Summers. Summers seems to be very like bombastic and goofy. He almost reminds me of Garp a little bit. Like he has that same energy. Like obviously he's, I think, on a different level of personality, but he has that same like old man active energy. So he's getting a kick out of like basically the kids having thorns around them, the idea of people hurting themselves trying to save them. Like he's enjoying that, which is crazy, but it's like the most casual, sadistic type of person. And something I noticed is that he keeps talking about like love and how much love ends up hurting you. So I'm wondering if his thorn ability, that's what we get revealed like in the next panel, is that he has the thorn fruit. He is a briar man. But I'm wondering if his thorn ability plays into the idea of love, where it's, because he says the more love you have, the deeper passion's thorns take hold. So it's like the more you love something or show love towards something, the more those thorns will hurt when you interact with them. Which would explain earlier why when Saul went to grab the kids, it didn't just stab him, it like blew him back. And he displays his power by having some thorns like basically twist and turn around his arm. And initially, when I first saw that, I was like, oh, okay. Like, I was so just not impressed by this power. I mean, conceptually, it seems like it has some cool application. I thought it'd be way more intense, especially compared to some of the other powers. This one is definitely my least favorite of the God's Knight so far. But to be fair, I do like Summers as a character because he keeps trying to interact with Gunko, and Gunko's just not having it. Like, he's so goofy, and then she's just stoic. And like, he's trying to get her to laugh or react. He can't get anything out of her. And then you have Killingham, who has what I think is the coolest power in the God's Knights, and is one of the coolest reveals of the chapter. Because he starts off by asking Gunko basically which path she's having the kids take. And essentially they're trying to get them to cross through the 8th branch to the harbor so they can get them on the boat and take them out. And it's a somewhat long route, but to be fair, it doesn't seem like people there can really stop them, so it is what it is. And as they're discussing that, Killingham mentions that the food that they're eating needs salt. And Summers initially thinks about he thinks about it and he says salt, and as he does that, Killingham uses his power to not only put him to sleep, but to reach inside of his dream, pull out the salt, and then proceed to use it on his meal. And then we get the reveal of Killingham's fruit, which is a mythical dragon fruit, Muddlekirin. He's a dream materializing man. So he basically has the Kirin ability. He can materialize whatever the person's dreaming of. And this comes with the added effect of putting them to sleep. So when Summers started thinking about salt, Killingham immediately put him to sleep, reached in his dream, took out the salt he was thinking of, and then woke him up. That power is crazy. And initially when we first saw what was happening to the kids, I thought they were separate powers. I thought Summers had the sleep ability, and then Killingham had the dream creation ability. That's all just Killingham. So as far as superpower lottery, I think Killingham takes it easily. That's such a hack's ability. And Summers confirms that that's how he ended up taking the demons out of the kids' dreams. He used that ability. Apparently he can use it multiple times simultaneously. So if a bunch of people around him are thinking of stuff, he can put them all to sleep and then pull out all their dreams. Not only that, it seems like you need Killingham there to wake them up. It's possible that you can jostle someone awake, but with Summers here, he told him to wake up and he woke up. So for right now, I'm thinking that they're stuck in that sleep state and they can't wake up unless Killingham says so. That power is crazy. And I'm happy because I like Killingham the most, I think, design-wise, out of all the God's Knights. So I'm happy that his power is also broke, because he's just becoming my favorite God Knight. I'm Team Killingham. And surprisingly enough, once we add the salt to the meal, we actually get a reaction from Gunko, who's like, oh, the food's good now. And she even asks about the calories of the meal. And apparently 0 calories because it's a dream meal. So they dreamt of this meal. Killingham created it. They're able to interact and eat with it as if it's a real thing, but they don't get any of the calories. There's a lot going on with that power. That's all I'm gonna say. I would love to see more of it. This seems a bit too strong to just be using willy-nilly. I think there's something else that comes with it, but as far as just the initial description of the power, this one is one of the hacks ones. Mythical dragons are insane. And on a serious note, Gunko actually mentions that she saw Luffy's ship docked here. And she says, Emperor Straw Hat Luffy is on Elbaf. And just another reminder that Luffy has come so far that he is being referred to by top people as Emperor Straw Hat. So people are really putting respect on Luffy's name, which is fantastic. You love to see it. They also mentioned that the path the kids are taking is going to the fire. And that's what I was talking about earlier, where like the 8th branch is currently on fire because it's above Loki. And their response is that, oh well, if they die, they die. We'll lead the next batch of kids over them. So they're literally just like, yeah, it doesn't matter. If they die, we'll bring more. And they're so casual about basically kidnapping these kids and doing these terrible things. It's kind of shocking, kind of not, because we kind of expect this from basically any of the celestial top world government people. So, you know, it is what it is. And then we cut back to Loki. And he's putting on a brave front, but it's kind of obvious that he's struggling a little bit because we have him like huffing and like pausing between speech. He keeps reiterating that if they don't set him free, he's going to cause havoc. And he has like lightning sparking around him. So he's revving up. He mentions that no one can lift Ragnir. So I think this is like a confirmation that the hammer he's using is basically a variation of Mjolnir, which is that Thor's hammer. And I'm imagining there's a reason that no one else can lift that weapon. And he's basically giving an ultimatum like, let everyone die or let me go. And the crazy part is he's like, either you let me die or I'll kill everyone. And then he's like, when I'm free, I'm gonna kill everyone. So it's like, bro, what do you mean? Our options are you kill everyone or you kill everyone. And before Heidrun can step in and like basically answer the ultimatum, Zoro and Luffy step up and are like, all right, we gave you a chance. We got to put you down. You're doing too much. And initially they're a bit worried about Luffy because Loki's basically spamming lightning. Luffy's rubber. It doesn't matter. He goes straight in there. And when I saw this, I initially thought that Luffy had punched Loki and it knocked him out. The paneling was weird. I think what actually happened here is that Luffy basically got ready to punch Loki, or at the very least, when he used his Honefusen, he nudged Loki. I don't think Luffy actually made a punch. Because 1, we don't see a named attack. 2, there's not really any impact as far as Luffy's arm. You just see it inflating. And then Loki just falls over. So I think what happened was Loki just ran out of energy and he passed out. And that's kind of further confirmed by Zoro being like, yeah, he was already on death's door. Him standing was basically all he could do. And now Luffy's basically begging Heidrun and the rest of the giants to save his life. And it's very odd because Luffy is more or less not really invested in the lives of that many others outside people he cares about. And he seems really invested in Loki. And even if Loki has like information on Shanks, it seems so weird to me that Luffy's like, I don't care what kind of person he is, I don't want to see him die. I feel like Luffy, not to say that Luffy doesn't care about people like living or dying, but he seems like more invested in this than we've seen him in a lot of things. So I'm curious to see where that pans out, if it's really just to get that information about Shanks. If so, I think that says a lot about Luffy's character and how he's like, he knows Shanks, he knows something about Shanks. I got to get that info no matter what. Because we know Luffy loves Shanks, but it's interesting to see how far he'll kind of go and how out of character he'll go for Shanks. And they kind of set Loki up. They start helping him. They mention that, or as Gerd mentions that for a full recovery, it'll take several months. Which is kind of crazy. Because you would think it would be a bit faster. But I guess based on what Shamrock did, Loki took some damage. If it's going to take several months for a giant to recover, Shamrock did a lot of damage. And they're debating moving him around because they can't really treat him here. They immediately chained him back up. Like they put all the chains on him again. They said, nah, lock this man up. So he's chained up again, but he's laid out. And the scene is very interesting because it's Loki laid up with the rest of the giants. And he looks normal size. Like they all look kind of normal sized until you realize that, well, Loki's a giant. He's bigger than the other giants, but they're all relative in size. So this scene looks like a bunch of normal-ish people sitting around each other. It's a bunch of giants sitting around each other. It makes the scaling really weird. And I think to some degree, Loki might be a bit smaller, just a bit, than how we saw him when he initially stood up. Luffy mentions that Loki's horns are real. And we see that they are like jutting out of his head, so they're in fact real horns, and they're symbols of his ancient giant blood. So we know Harold had horns that he eventually got rid of to kind of get rid of that stigma of ancient giants. Loki kept his. And we also know that basically Heidrun didn't get that same blood trait. So this is likely why Loki is the beast that he is because he has that ancient giant blood in him. And we get like a little flashback of the past through Heidrun, where basically Harold is saying both of his kids are important. Heidrun and Loki are both precious to him. I feel like that's iffy, especially because Heidrun wasn't like, if I recall, he wasn't allowed to be in the castle. And I don't know if that was for appearances or if that was like politics, but Heidrun definitely wasn't treated as precious as Loki probably initially was before he was seen as a plague. And we see that basically Loki would pick on Heidrun, basically calling him weak. And an interesting thing about young Loki is that he still has his eyes covered. So he's, I guess, always had those bandages on him. And this should be pre-fruit. Loki shouldn't have gotten the fruit, I don't think, until he, quote unquote, kills Harold. So there's a different connection to why his eyes are bandaged up. And the fact that he can still see and stuff, I would assume means he has some type of insane observation hockey that he's had since he was a kid. And I'm guessing more or less the power he has something to do with Ragnir, the hammer. So I think like he had crazy strength and stuff, but in the past he was using like a kanabo, or basically the weapon that Kaido was using. He wasn't using a hammer. So that hammer seems like a relatively new addition to his power set. The lightning seems different. That all seems to be stemming from whatever fruit he ate. And thinking about all that old stuff makes Heidrun basically want to kill Loki. So he pulls out an axe and he starts swinging on him. The rest of the giants stop him, which is interesting. It's weird, right? Loki is this plague that they're basically trying to seal away. And they see someone try to kill him and they stop it. And I'm not saying like it's weird conspiracy wise. It's just weird in general. I think for the most part, they don't want to see their friend be a cold-blooded murderer. So like, hey, maybe you should just relax a little bit. And Heidrun's obviously mad that basically he got picked on as a kid. And Loki said some rather unfavorable things about his mom, so Heidrun's in his feelings. Loki doesn't care. Loki's there like, listen, stop crying. He also says do it already, which is usually when a character that's like set up to be a big bad is like, yeah, let's go ahead and kill me. That's usually an indicator that there's more to their character than them being a big bad. And like we guessed it, we had a lot of different speculation. We basically did not trust the story we were told. And Loki kind of confirms it here, where there's more to King Harold's death than just Loki killed him. Because Loki says, "Do you actually think I killed our father in cold blood? You don't really buy it, do you?" So he's saying, like, you know that's not a real story. Like, you know that's not what happened. My guess is that next chapter we're going to get the reveal of what actually happened. I still suspect Jarl of some kind of foul play, whether he's aware of it or not at this point in time. I think Jarl has a lot to do with what happened to King Harold. At the very least, he knows the true story. But that is a chapter. A nice chapter to come back to. A little bit of everything. Like I said, I really enjoyed getting more of Killingham. I think that was probably my favorite part of the chapter. I want more of him. I hope that as we explore the God Knights, we do more. I really hope that he's like a top God Knight. Like, and he's a saint, so he's got to be relatively important in the God Knights and the Celestials. So I'm hoping to get a lot more of him. And I expect, like I said, to get the backstory of what happened with Harold in the next chapter or two. We might even get like a full flashback form where we see, like, in real time or in flashback real time, what transpired that day. All in all, a solid chapter. I wanted the pacing to be a little bit slower, I think. I don't know what it was, but I felt like one or two panels jumped a little too fast. But nothing insane, nothing crazy. As I was reading it, it felt like I jumped a little bit, and like I went back and was like, did I miss something? Or no, we're just moving a little faster. But I will catch y'all in the next one. Peace.